Honeybee colonies all have some sort of queen-related event that happens throughout the season. In this particular video, I want to talk to you about how to recognize dead queens. There's no bigger queen-related event than having a dead queen. And a lot of new beekeepers especially think, oh, the queens are going to live forever. I read in a book that the queens live 5, 6, 7 years. Well, it's true. People have documented long-lived honeybee queens. But the real truth is that that's the edge of the bell curve. The average queen probably doesn't live longer than about a year and a half. In fact, I did a research project years ago and I lived in Georgia and I was working with commercial beekeepers and we were clipping and marking queens. We put them into their colonies and we were seeing queen death within 8 months to 12 months after putting those queens in colonies. And so I would say the average queen only lives about a year, maybe just over. And you may not recognize it if you're not clipping and marking your queen because you wouldn't know it's the same one or not. They could have requeened and you wouldn't even be aware that they did it. So how do you recognize when your colony has a dead queen? Well, when you go into your hive, one of the first things that you can pick up on is simply an audible noise. Now, I want to point out, this is a very subjective way to determine if your colony is queen right or queenless. I associate what I call a roar, kind of a loud roar that the colony has. It tells me that I should be worried as I'm going through that nest. It's not indicative all the time of queenlessness, and sometimes you'll have a queenless colony that doesn't roar, but they sound different, especially by the time you get to the brood box. They sound just a little bit different. And that won't show up every time. So the audible cue is not really the better of the cues that are available, or the best cue even. It's really just one thing that can tell you as you're working through that hive that you might have to look for a queen and make sure everything's okay. The second thing you'll notice, specifically in the brood nest, is you typically see queen cells quickly. Seeing queen cells is an indication of a few things. Maybe they want to replace a bad queen, maybe they're getting ready to swarm, all of those things. But when I see a queen cell, my mind says, okay, you've got to stop and assess the queen situation in this hive before you go any further. So seeing queen cells is a very important sign to me that that colony may be queenless and trying to remedy this problem on their own. So if I see queen cells, then I look for the next two clues that they're queenless, and the first of those being, do I see eggs? I specifically look for eggs because if I see eggs, then the queen has been there within the last 3 days. It's unlikely that you're going to have dozens and dozens of queen cells scattered throughout the nest if the queen laid eggs within the last day or two. It's far more likely if you see queen cells that they're preparing to swarm and maybe the queen's slowing down or they're requeening, but either case, I look for eggs because eggs tell me, has the queen been there recently? And if I don't see eggs, I kind of step that up a little bit and look for young larvae. In a queenless colony, you'll often see no eggs, no young larvae, and you'll have a lot of queen cells hanging in the nest. And of course, the queen could have died yesterday before I'm going into that colony today. So maybe these cues haven't had time to develop. Maybe there's still eggs because the queen was there 2 days ago or 3 days ago. But if you come back in a week, all of that will have changed if the colony was in fact queenless. So moving up from no eggs to no young larvae, the next thing I look for is the queen herself. I've got queen cells in the nest, I've got no eggs, I've got no young larvae. Now I go through systematically, frame by frame, to look for the queen. And I know maybe a lot of you listening to me now may find it difficult to isolate and see that queen. That's why eggs are always the best clue moving into it, because even if you can't see a queen, you should be able to recognize eggs. But at this point, I move on to start looking physically for the queen. If I go through the nest and do not see her, and I have no eggs, and maybe even no young larvae, and I have queen cells, then I default to this colony is queenless and I need to do something about it. What is it that I can do? Well, I can aid in the requeening process. Have a great video about that, different ways to requeen your colonies. Make sure and check it out. But hopefully something that I've told you in this video will give you more confidence spotting a colony that is queenless.